வணக்கம். நம்முடைய நிகழ்ச்சி இன்னும் ஒரு 2 நிமிடங்களில் தொடங்கிவிடும். We will start it soon. I request the chief person who is going to speak all the time, Dr. Atish Dabholkar, to come to the stage and please take a seat. Okay. If there are new people coming, probably they can go to the, there are some places here and also upstairs. Okay. I'll speak both in Tamil and English. But Atish Dabholkar knows Marathi, Hindi, English, French, and Italian. Right? Am I right? Okay. So he will not be able to speak in Tamil, but he will speak in English for you. First, there are 3 things I have to introduce. One is for 2 minutes about Tamilnadu Science Forum. What is it has been doing? And what are the plans we have for the future? Following that, I will talk for another 2 minutes about this program, which is Science and Superstition, which surprisingly coincided with the visit of, actually, it was a chance. Atish is known to me for the past 30 years. In fact, when he was a student in IIT-Kanpur, I was also there as a postdoctoral fellow. I knew him at that time. And probably this is the first time you are coming to Chennai. So and he's also my Facebook friend. So when I saw that he is coming for our program, which is about discussing quantum black hole, he has been giving quantum black hole and the connection to Ramanujan's work, extraordinary work which was done by Ramanujan about 100 years back, is coming and hitting us, literally hitting us, and the kind of things which were there. He was one of the few people who understood and carried forward about the link between quantum black hole and Ramanujan's work. But he also has great record, which I will tell, but I'm going to talk 2 minutes about the science and superstition, which is been bothering many of us for the past several years. And surprisingly, so unfortunately it happened some 2-3 days back in one of the science congress meeting. Extraordinary remarks were made by not some low level or some person who is going to some office or somewhere, talking about something. The vice chancellor of a university, speaking fairly irrational thing. We were worried. Actually, what kind of thing is happening? This has been happening for several years in the past. We were worried, and good thing is, Vijayaraghavan, who is actually advisor to the Prime Minister, himself openly came out and condemned it. And this is what we want from academies, science academies, scientists, everyone, to tell that stop this nonsense. Science is science. Great work was done in the past. We are all aware of the great work done by Aryabhatta, Brahmagupta, Bhaskara, Madhava, several people who have done extraordinary work. Sushrutam, so many work. Let us give credence to those work and talk about them. And also now we have to move forward. We have to go to new things and talk about what is it we have to do for our new young people going to schools and colleges, etc. So given this kind of a background, there are several people in the past. I can list them, several people, but I will start with the most important person who is also closely connected with today's meeting. That is Dr. Narenda Dabholkar. Narenda Dabholkar was a medical practitioner. He has been doing extraordinary work, and he started, I will tell exact name of the organization. which was heading Maharashtra Andha Shraddha Nirmulan Samiti. Correct? So Akhil Bharatiya Andha Shraddha Nirmulan Samiti also for whole thing. And he was heading that, and he was fighting tirelessly among people for this anti-superstition law, which is nicknamed Anti-Superstition law. This is prevention and eradication of human sacrifice and other inhuman, evil, agori practices and black magic and other issues. So he was a person who was fighting for all these things in Maharashtra, and 2013, August 20th, he was shot. And when he was fighting and asking for that, within 2 days, they actually introduced an ordinance for this, because that was a powerful message which has been going on. And the thing is, there is some movement towards actual law is enacted, thanks to one of the leading person who wanted that law to be enacted in Maharashtra. But it should spread to all the states. It should come to all the states, that we should be talking about legally that spreading superstition, spreading this kind of evil practices, etc., are dangerous for this country. So now, unfortunately, the case itself is not settled, that particular case. But unfortunate, I hope something will happen. Following this, several people, Panzare, Kalburgi, Gauri Lankesh, several people have been fighting for the rational movement. Tamilnadu is well known for it. Kerala is well known for it. Karnataka and other places had a lot of tradition of people speaking for rational voices. And this is one thing which we have to be aware of and carry forward this thing. But I must tell, today's speaker happens to be, his uncle is Narenda Dabholkar. Okay? And he himself, after that, so perturbed, he voluntarily, I heard he gave up physics for a few months and then fought for making sure that this particular thing come out as a law. Now, Atish Dabholkar, as I mentioned earlier, he did his master's from IIT-Kanpur. In fact, around that time when I was there. And I knew him at that time itself. But then he went for his PhD, Princeton University. Jeff Harvey is a well-known physicist, theoretical physicist from Princeton. He was there. He was a postdoctoral fellow at Rutgers, Harvard, and he was also at Caltech as a senior research fellow. And then in 1996, he came to India as a full-fledged professor at Tata Institute of Fundamental Research. He was there till 2010, and he won the Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize, which is the highest prize given for science, physical sciences, and he won that in 2006. And he is also the chair, the excellence of the National Research Agency of the France, 2007. Currently, he is the head of the High Energy Physics, Cosmology and Astroparticle Physics in Abdus Salam International Centre for Theoretical Physics, ICTP, which is known. Now they have added Abdus Salam's name also. So it is called ASICTP. We used to go there quite often, all the time. And he has, to his credit, a name in the literature of physics. He did his work on supersymmetric solitons. I do not want to explain any of this thing. And it is called, in string theory, it is called Dabholkar-Harvey states, even now in the literature. When it's like calling some name for the thing, that's what they associate, and it is his contribution. And he has been working recently on the mysteries of quantum black holes and mysterious connections. In fact, even now we do not understand completely to Ramanujan's work, which he was doing almost on his deathbed. And he wrote his last letter to Hardy explaining something, and people find, even now are working. In fact, they don't know There is a lot of development which has taken place in the last few years, maybe 10 years, and thanks to Atish and his collaborators. They have been doing excellent work, and that is his background. But when he was coming here, I knew about this. I made a request, would you be interested in speaking about science and rationalism? He said, let me give the title as Science and Superstition. So I left it to him, and now I invite Atish to speak. He will speak about 45 to 50 minutes, following which some question-answer session will be there. People can ask in a moderated way. Then he will be willing to answer them. Thank you. Please.
Okay. Well, thank you, TRG, for this very kind introduction. When he asked me to give a lecture here, I readily agreed because, as he mentioned, I have been quite, I mean, even though I'm kind of a scientist working in fairly abstract parts of theoretical physics, I do believe that as scientists, it's our responsibility to, first of all, to communicate what it is that we do, and also be involved, especially in a country like India, in the kind of social transformation that is required. And we cannot be isolated in ivory towers all the time. Okay, some of the time we are, but sometimes we should sort of get involved with this work. And we were quite happy that the Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti, which is the Committee for Eradication of Superstitions in Maharashtra, has a number of important successes. In particular, the law against superstitions, which was passed a few years ago, and it has had actually a major impact. And in some sense, the Tamilnadu Science Forum is like a sister organization because they are sort of working in Tamil Nadu in the same spirit. And moreover, Tamil Nadu has a great, has a long tradition going back to the great Periyar himself. So I readily agreed to talk. Unfortunately, I don't speak Tamil, but I would have loved to speak in Tamil. I prefer to speak in local language. I mean, when I'm in Maharashtra, I always speak in Marathi. But okay, so I will. This talk will be in English, and part of my discussion will be a bit theoretical and philosophical. As a scientist, how do I look at it? How should one think about superstitions, faith, belief, and so on? But my experience is that it is easy to get lost in philosophical discussions very quickly. So it is important to keep the discussion centered, let's say, on some more concrete things like our constitution or the law. In legal matters, you cannot just go on some metaphysical plane. So you have to be very concrete about what you mean by something. And so I would like to, therefore, even though the first part of my talk will be a bit philosophical, it will become clear that it is towards sort of trying to explain what the anti-superstition law means in Maharashtra and what perhaps we can do here. And I'm very happy to see a number of young people in this audience, and I hope this work will actually spread not only in Maharashtra but also in Tamil Nadu. So as a reference, actually, I had written a couple of articles at the time of this passing of this law. So as TRG mentioned, I really felt it as a responsibility. I mean, not only because of my uncle was involved in this, but as a scientist and as a citizen of Maharashtra, I found it completely appalling and a very direct kind of assault on our constitutional rights and our many of our fundamental ideas on science itself. So that was one of the reasons I felt that it was my responsibility to get involved. And actually, at that time, we were successful in getting signatures from something like 3,000 scientists from all over India, something like 100,000 citizens from Maharashtra in support of this particular law, and that certainly helped in getting this law passed. So those articles are on this website, antisuperstition.org, you can find out. There is also a nice book by Johannes Quack, by Oxford University Press, which talks about this anti-superstition movement in Maharashtra. And he talks broadly about this rationalism and criticism of religion in India, more broadly. And he spends actually a substantial part, almost half the book, on the Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti in Maharashtra. And there is a recent book that has come out written by it's a translation of a book written by my uncle, Narenda Dabholkar. In Marathi, it was called, the English translation is A Case for Reason. It's quite a nice translation, published by Amazon Press. Okay, so as I said, we should sort of try to base our discussion within some framework. If you just talk about abstract ideas about what is faith, what is superstition, what is Jesus, then we can never, or what is some divine intervention from goddess of Namagiri, things like that, then we can get lost in the discussion. So, whereas now we should really frame all social discussions in the framework of the Constitution. And our Constitution, one of the guiding principles of the Constitution is to develop the scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform. And actually, this is a very wonderful phrase, probably has inspirations from people like Ambedkar and Pandit Nehru. And each of these terms is very important. Scientific temper, but it includes humanism. You see, there is no conflict between science and humanism, but they are to be taken together. Spirit of inquiry and reform. To abjure violence, to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood, okay, we should probably call it now sisterhood also, amongst all people, and to renounce practices derogatory to the dignity of women. And as a counterpoint to this, and which I will come to this, our Constitution guarantees liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. So, as I will make it clear, oftentimes this discussion is placed as a kind of a conflict between science and religion, or a conflict between. So, the focal point for this discussion is quite often the relation between religion and science. And my own position, which is also not very far from the position of Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti, is not that of kind of evangelical scientism. It's not, we don't believe, even as a scientist, I don't believe that science has answers to everything. But there are clearly defined areas of human experience where science has been an amazingly successful, amazingly important heritage, where we should listen to what science is telling us. And there are aspects of human experience where having to do with values and things like love and so on, right? Where there is no, you don't expect to have scientific explanation, or what is right, what is wrong. And the related question is the relation between beliefs and superstitions. So, and this becomes almost an unending discussion oftentimes. So, I will be very brief, and then I will turn the discussion towards the law to make it clear that one does not have to really get distracted in all kinds of long philosophical discussions, because it is possible to actually point out very, very clear areas where one can be completely unambiguously certain that everybody can agree. That was one of the big achievements of this law. It took 20 years. This Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti was fighting for this law for 20 years. Twice, I think, it was passed in the assembly, but did not get passed in the council, in the Vidhan Sabha versus Vidhan Parishad. There were innumerable redraftings, very major jurisprudential, P.B. Sawant, Dharmadhikari, these were Supreme Court justices, High Court justices were involved in drafting it. There were rewritings, many, many amendments. There was initially, they had something like a list of 50 things that were considered superstitions, which had to be shortened to just 12. But what one learned in that experience was that it is possible to agree, even with the most people with very divergent points of views. There is a kind of a core body where we can agree that these things are definitely superstitions. And there could be other things where people's opinions might differ. But I think a good point to start is, let's start where it is very clearly a superstition. So if somebody tells you that I can perform surgery with just mere hands, then that's definitely a superstition, right? But, and you might think that this sounds like some very outrageous, doesn't happen in India. But in Karnataka, there was a person in a daroga who used to perform hundreds of surgeries with mere hands and office scissors. And he would just put some cloth and do something underneath it, take a knife and do something, then put it all, and okay, there is no injury, nothing has happened. And people with serious serious medical problems like heart problems or something, appendicitis would go there. They would go back feeling that they are cured, but ultimately the disease would hit them. And this person would of course not take money, but he would accept donations. So he used to get hundreds of, people would give donations of thousands of rupees. So this is the kind of exploitative and fraudulent practice which is what we want to avoid. And therefore, it is not some kind of an attack on people's personal religious beliefs. So, and in fact, there is a very interesting, there is a kind of difference between the position that I would like to take and some of the positions taken by some of the leading rationalists. Sorry, I forgot to add that reference here, but I think I can find it somewhere. But there is one point of view which was, let me just see if I can find it. That in one of the Indian Rationalist Society meetings, it was Paul Kurtz who was, I think, giving a keynote speech, and he is one of the leading rationalists, and he stated that, so in the inaugural address, Paul Kurtz, on the occasion of the Golden Jubilee of the Indian Rationalist Society, he quoted Clifford, who is again another rationalist, a basic rationalist principle. It is wrong always, everywhere, and for everyone to believe anything upon insufficient evidence. And this formulation, in my opinion, is not entirely correct. I mean, the more correct formulation, in my opinion, is that, I do agree with Kurtz in his basic motivations, but I think the correct formulation should be, it is wrong always, everywhere, and for anyone to continue to believe in something, even upon sufficient evidence to the contrary. You see, there is a very subtle difference between this, but that difference is very important. Why do I say that? Because belief is actually essential for every human endeavor, including science. And it need not always have a rational foundation. Every day in our life, there is nothing wrong in having a belief in something. Even in the forefronts of science, where I'm conducting research, when you are exploring new territories, it's often necessary to proceed on the basis of a belief or a good hunch. While this is acceptable and even essential, in science, not every belief is accorded the high status of a fact. Okay, and this distinction is very, very important, and something that doesn't come to us naturally. You see, it requires a bit of a training in how science is done. See, and I will later on give an example of the Higgs boson, which was a very strongly held belief among physicists for 50 years, and they were completely sure that something like that must exist. But it was not accepted as a fact for a very long time, until an experiment actually confirmed it. And it took 50 years, 10 billion euros, to thousands of scientists working on it to confirm the predictions of that theory. And only then the belief was accepted as a fact. So while there is nothing wrong in having beliefs, one should not confuse every belief with a fact. And much of the confusion about this process, so this happens through a very unsparing criticism and experimentation. And this is actually the reason why scientific method has been so immensely successful. And actually, it's quite remarkable. After all, we evolved from monkeys and we were picking berries. The fact that our brain is capable of understanding all the intricate details from the electron and positrons and semiconductors all the way to the universe and black holes is quite remarkable. And the reason we have been able to make this very consistent progress is because we do not allow ourselves to be fooled by our beliefs, but we always have to subject our beliefs to unsparing criticism and experimentation. And much of this confusion about this process arises because it requires statistical reasoning, which does not come naturally to people. So what do I mean by statistical reasoning? See, science can never speak with absolute certainty, but only with a varying degree of confidence. That how confident are you that the sun will rise tomorrow? You will say, okay, I'm willing to bet 1 rupee to 1 crore that the sun will rise tomorrow. Of course, it's completely possible that the sun does not rise tomorrow, right? Maybe some meteor will come and hit Earth and it will not rise tomorrow. But given there is a very good, whatever we understand about planetary motion, whatever data that we have available, it's fair to say that sun is going to rise tomorrow. So similarly, a doctor may believe that a quinine cures malaria. But then how do the doctors arrive at, how does when you release a drug in the market, they have to perform tests, they give it to so many patients, and if maybe if you give it to 1,000 patients, maybe one of them doesn't work. So in that case, you would say, and maybe the other 1,000 are cured, then you would say that, okay, my belief is as strong as 1 in 1,000, that I'm willing to bet 1,000 rupees to 1 for malaria. For some other diseases, like chemotherapy, your level of confidence will be quite low, I mean, even for the doctors, because there we don't have enough evidence. Our body is a very complicated thing. We don't quite understand how cancer works. So we have some kind of treatment, and it does have cure, but it's not as strong. Our belief is not as strong in it as it is. So while everything at some level is a belief, depending on the degree of your confidence, you basically call it a fact. And this, of course, so therefore the difference between a belief and a fact is this a question of statistics and degree. Now just because it is statistical, I mean oftentimes then people turn this immediately around and they say, okay, everything is statistical. You believe in something, I believe in something, so what's wrong with that, right? Even though it is statistical, it doesn't mean that it is subjective. It only means that we are not absolutely certain, but we are sufficiently certain. See, for example, you can be pretty certain that if you jump out of the window from a 5th floor, you will die, right? You cannot be absolutely certain. There are cases where people actually survive following that. But if you're foolish enough to really go and say that, no, what is the proof? Tell me. Then that would be kind of a foolish position to take, that, okay, I want to jump from the window because maybe, there are people who survive. But you would again say that, look, it would be a foolish thing to do because 1 out of 10,000 cases maybe survive, but there is a very good chance that you will die. So that's the kind of philosophy that with which one should approach superstition. So now one can sort of make a distinction between, if there is plenty of evidence with high odds in favor of a belief, then we call it a fact. Whereas if there is plenty of evidence with high odds against that belief, and we still continue to believe in that, then that you can call it as a superstition. And in this way, this formulation differs from what Paul Coode said, that he said that, okay, we cannot believe unless there is evidence. We do believe up to a point, but our degree of belief depends on how much evidence that we have. Moreover, sometimes actually there is such huge body of evidence already scientifically that if somebody makes a claim that is not in accordance with carefully verified facts and interwoven by well-tested scientific principles, for example, conservation of energy. If somebody is going to tell you that they can take out a vibhuti out of thin air, you should be extremely suspicious, even before doing an experiment. Why? Because conservation of energy has been tested in literally thousands of experiments. It has been tested in literally millions or billions of experiments every day in accelerator laboratories. And if somebody is going to tell you that, okay, they can just violate conservation of energy, then we say, okay, please give us the evidence. So such a belief is highly suspect, and even without doing an experiment, it's a bit like, at the time when people had not really explored Earth, if somebody said that there is some exotic island somewhere in the middle of the Pacific, where there are all these exotic animals, dinosaurs, then you might have believed in it at that time. But now that we have satellites going all around the Earth, we have taken the photos of the Earth from all over the place, we have ships going all over, we explored every corner of the Earth. If somebody tells you, there is no terra incognita anymore, there is no unexplored, unknown territory on Earth. And that's the kind of situation we have in. And sometimes it is hard to appreciate how deeply we understand science. You know, some of these things that we understand, right? I mean, your mobile phone, right? We are getting signal from all over the world. We are getting images from Beijing Olympics, you know, just by clicking on the phone. It's all explained by Maxwell's equations. And we understand them well enough that now millions and billions of people are using their mobile phone, using that technology, using that science. So our degree of confidence in that science is much, much higher than, say, our degree of confidence in cancer therapy. So we have to always, even within science, we have to make a distinction between what we really understand, about which we are totally sure, and what we understand less sure, and what we are kind of speculating. And there is a nice comment which is very important in the days of fake news, and which is actually, this is a very important statement, that everyone is entitled to their own beliefs, but not to their own facts. And that is actually part of the problem, that nowadays you can just declare, no, I believe in this, and that's the fact. I mean, and if there are enough people saying that, then you decide facts by kind of a voting. And that is not how facts are decided. Facts are decided by experiment and not by how many people are behind you. So just to illustrate this, a good example of how science proceeds from belief to fact is the discovery of the Higgs boson at this huge accelerator in Geneva, CERN. So the belief in the existence of the Higgs boson was widely shared by most particle physicists for close to 50 years. And they were based on very deep and compelling theoretical arguments from symmetry and logical consistency. But it was not accepted. It was accepted as a fact only after this excruciatingly difficult experiment involving thousands of scientists and decades of arduous work. And only after the data was so strong that one could be sure with odds of 1,000,000 to 1. So it's actually quite noticeable. They had data with confidence level of 1,000 to 1, that you're willing to bet 1,000 rupees to 1. But they did not publish this result because it's such a complicated machine that you can actually go wrong in many different ways. So 1,000 to 1, most scientists felt was not good enough to really have strong enough belief in this. So a very simple and important principle of science, that as much belief as there is evidence. You know, you can have only so much belief in something as there is evidence. Another principle by Feynman is that, first principle is that you must not fool yourself, and you are the easiest person to fool. And this happens all the time in research, you know. Every day, once in a while, you say, we have a great idea. It will work it out like that. And then you work for 2 months and you figure out, well, it actually doesn't work like that. Or you're doing an experiment and you're seeing a signal and you say, yes, amazing discovery. But then you do some very detailed data analysis and after 6 months you find out, oh, you were completely wrong. So this kind of self-criticism is extremely important. And that is the reason why science has to progress, can progress only in this way, because human mind can play all kinds of tricks, you know. Because I know this from my own experience. Even if you're trained in science, you can fool yourself very easily. There are great scientists who fool themselves easily. And as I will give an example, second principle is that extraordinary claims need extraordinary evidence. So if somebody told you that there is a golden elephant which flies and it keeps track of everybody's papa punya, like that, he's some godlike creature and he lives in some island, you would be extremely skeptical. You should be skeptical. First of all, why? From everything that we understand from biology, first of all, nobody has ever seen a golden elephant. All the elephants that we've seen are black. Then the elephants don't fly. Then elephant made from a metal is completely in contradiction with whatever we understand about evolution. So while you cannot completely rule out, but who knows, maybe such a thing exists. But if somebody is making that claim, the burden of proof is upon that person to prove some extraordinary evidence. You know, give me a photograph of that elephant or something like that. Only then I will accept that. Otherwise, it is our right to be skeptical about it. So I think that is the principle of skepticism. You know, it's not out of disrespect for that person. So I think this is something that I want to say, that oftentimes it's not a question of, I mean, in the anti-superstition movement in Maharashtra, this has been an experience that it's not in very often times, what is required is not ridicule or acting superiorly as, you know, you're some scientist and you're telling people what to do. But rather to understand, sometimes even scientists themselves can fool themselves. And this is a very, very good example. So many of you might still believe that vitamin C cures cold, right? I mean, I myself used to believe it. Every time I got a cold, I used to get vitamin C tablet. But then I read a bit about it. And this was advocated by none other than Linus Pauling. You know, he was like one of the great chemists, a Nobel laureate, one of the top scientists. And he believed in it so fervently that he wrote a book about it. And it became a big industry. And then the pharmaceutical industry immediately picked on it. So vitamin C, vitamin C. But the scientific community did not accept that as a fact. So he said, okay, I mean, Linus Pauling is saying it, we should take it seriously. I mean, he had some hunch and reasons to believing why vitamin C might be a good thing. But huge number of tests that people did, they did not find much evidence for it. So it is always possible that vitamin C helps you. But one would not believe in it as something like a God-given thing, and just because some big scientist is saying it. So the skepticism is directed not only towards some traditional practices, but it is equally must be directed towards also modern superstitions. So this is an example which makes it clear that it's not a conflict between science and some tradition or science and religion. It's just a method of science that a scientist himself has to subject himself or herself to the same method of inquiry. Now let's come back to this question between science and religion. So religion operates in the realm of values. So what a person uses to make her inner life meaningful is often a result of, not of reason, but of their psychological needs or their personal history. Moreover, religious ideas are so elastic, and the personal interpretation of the same religious text is so diametrically opposite that you cannot really agree upon something. So Mahatma Gandhi also took the name of Ram, and he went to Nokhali and stopped a massacre that was happening, taking the name of Ram. So in that case, you know, who am I to question his belief and tell him, no, don't do this. But if somebody is taking the name of Ram and destroying a masjid or attacking some another community and trying to kill people, then that's when, so if what one uses as a personal motivation or is a very deeply, so for this reason, even as a scientist, and even though I am myself unambiguously atheist and rationalist, I do believe that religious beliefs are a deeply personal matter, and I don't want to sit in judgment of somebody else's religious beliefs. You know, people believe, Mahatma Gandhi believed in some religious framework, and I don't want to question that framework. But Mahatma Gandhi also made some statements which actually Rabindranath Tagore criticized. You know, once he made a statement when there was a thing in Bihar, there was an earthquake, and he said that this is a punishment sent by God because of the crime of untouchability in the Hindu society. Now, this kind of a statement actually disturbed people like Rabindranath Tagore very much. I mean, they said, okay, Mahatma ji, you are a great man, but we will question this statement because we know that earthquakes don't happen because of some divine intervention. The earthquakes happen because earthquakes happen. So even for a person like Gandhiji, while we cannot question his personal motivations, we can question if he's going to say that some physical phenomena happens because of some supernatural reasons. Moreover, on the other hand, science operates in the realm of facts. And I think it's truly remarkable that we have now able to comprehend in such detail the inner workings of nature from atoms, cells, galaxies, all the way to the universe itself. And this magnificent edifice of science, I think it's one of the great, I think that it's one of the most precious and luminous heritage of humankind. We should really be proud of it. It's a very long tradition. One could say that as for Einstein, the striving of science to understand the laws of nature could itself be viewed as an expression of deep religiosity. So Einstein, for example, said that a person who is religiously enlightened appears to me to be one who has, to the best of his or her ability, liberated himself from the fetters of his selfish desires and is preoccupied with thoughts, feelings, and aspirations to which he clings because of their super-personal values. So the point is that when we believe in science, or when we talk about the scientific temper as in our constitution, we do not deny the value of our emotional side of our being, or we do not deny that we need super-personal goals, and some people might have all kinds of super-personal goals. The pursuit of science itself is a kind of a goal, or somebody might devote their life to music, or love of her family, or ideals of some religion. And I think there is absolutely nothing, or they can carry a locket of her mother, and you might feel good by carrying a copy of Quran, or I don't know, a copy of Darwin's paper, depending on whether you're a biologist or a religious person. And this is something that we don't want to, one should not, in the rationalist movement, I think this distinction is important to keep in mind, that our constitution guarantees liberty of thought, expression, belief, faith, and worship. So we should not, because this usually, the only result is that you alienate people. And it's not a good, nor is it a well-founded, constitutionally correct position, but it's also not a practically useful method of approaching people. So now let me come to the anti-superstition law in this context. So I sort of have explained these more theoretical ideas just to make it clear where our discussion stands. But in the case of anti-superstition law, it's actually even simpler. We don't have to even go into these very fine distinctions between what is a belief, what is a fact, what is a superstition. But this kind of question used to be asked all the time. Because first question that everybody would ask is, when you say andha shraddha, I have shraddha, so are you attacking my shraddha? Shraddha means faith, and andha shraddha means superstition. Now, there is absolutely, the main purpose of the anti-superstition law was that to bring social awakening and awareness in the society, to create a healthy and safe social environment with a view to protect the common people in the society against the evil and sinister practices thriving on ignorance. Okay? Now, this looks like a very convoluted formulation, but if you had followed the history of the anti-superstition law, it will become clear that this kind of very convoluted formulation was necessary just to make sure to keep people secure that this is not, if somebody wants to do Satyanarayan in their house, anti-superstition law, it would be wrong for the state to kind of intervene and be intrusive in your personal beliefs. You may not agree with the Satyanarayan, that the Satyanarayan has any effect. But suppose somebody wants to do it, or they get peace of mind from doing it, there is absolutely nothing that anti-superstition law has nothing to say about it, because it's not, you have the right, the constitution gives you. It would be unconstitutional if you try to make a law which goes into people's house and says that, why are you performing Satyanarayan? But there was a kind of a bad propaganda, there was a quite serious propaganda against the bill, saying that, oh, what will happen if this law is passed, we cannot be able to do this, we won't be able to do that. So what I would like to explain now is that this law is so transparent that there is absolutely no confusion about what is to be considered a superstition and what is forbidden under this law. And I will explain why such a law is important. So to avoid these kinds of very long philosophical discussions about what is belief, what is faith, what is superstition, the law has a schedule of very specific practices that are considered punishable under this law. For example, claiming to perform surgery with just fingers, one of the things that I talked about. Claiming to change the sex of a fetus in womb. Preventing a person from taking medical treatment for dog or snake bites and instead offering miracle cures. And some of the provisions of this law are that practice and why this law was important. So another question that was always asked is that why do we need a new law? Right? We have Indian Penal Code, we have other laws. We have laws against drug administration. But various quite eminent jurists like Dharmadhikari and P.B. Sawant explained to us and made it, so on their legal advice, it was clear that such a law is necessary because the current Indian Penal Code does not have sufficient provisions to cover. So this basically law addresses aspects which is not adequately covered by the existing laws. And I will explain with examples later on. Some of the provisions of this law which are important is that practice, propagation and promotion of such acts will be deemed cognizable and non-bailable offense. So cognizable is a technical legal term. Cognizable means that suppose a robbery is happening. See, normally police require a warrant to do something. Cognizable means that, but if suppose a robbery is happening, then they are not going to stop for a warrant, right? In that case, you can take cognizance of the fact that the robbery is happening. And similarly, if somebody is performing human sacrifice, and you might think that in the 21st century India, this doesn't happen. But number of cases, there were several examples where basically things were building up to human sacrifice. But with the help of this law, you can actually intervene and stop it before it actually happens. You see, so this provision is important. It's a cognizable and non-bailable offense. The law provides for the appointments of vigilance officers. So you can actually, so basically, and it prescribes imprisonment for the guilty for up to 7 years, independently of, I will give a couple of examples then when it will become clear why this is required and why it is different from what it is covered by the Indian Penal Code. And the main point is that both in terms of prevention and deterrence, there are two new, because you can prevent, since you have a vigilance officer, you have a greater possibility of preventing a crime from happening. And because of these imprisonment and making it a cognizable offense, it's also deterrence that people will be deterred, they will be prevented from actually doing something. And because we have a very explicit schedule of 12 items of the kind that I have mentioned, claiming to perform, there is absolutely no fear that this law will encroach upon people's, personal freedom to worship or do whatever they want to do. So this is completely a kind of a bogus fear that was created against this law. That, if this law is a kind of an attack on Hinduism, it's an attack on our values, an attack on our God, there is no such thing, and I will mention that, because only for this particular very specific 12 items, the law applies. And therefore, it ensures that religious rights that cause no mental, physical and financial harm to individuals, they do not come under the purview of this law. So it's very, very clear that you don't need all kinds of long theoretical discussions. So for example, let me now give some of the examples, and you will be surprised. So I used to work at Tata Institute, a place where people are discussing the Higgs boson and quantum black holes, the most advanced science of the day. But if you just go 50 kilometers away from, so this is a kind of a country that, our society is like that. It is so diverse that we sort of not only live at different places with different centuries, so at the same time. So very close to Bombay, even today, there are 10 districts where several women are declared a witch. And one of the provisions of this law is item 6 in the schedule of this law, which was an ordinance before, prevents this. You cannot declare a woman a witch and then kill her or take her land. And in fact, Madhu Mehra, who is the executive director she wrote a very correct observation that a lot of murders of the so-called witches happen because of land disputes. It's basically a form of gender-based discrimination against women who upset social hierarchies of gender, caste, amongst other things. So if there is a lower caste woman asking for land, then a simple thing for the male-dominated society to say that, okay, she's a witch, right? Once you declare a witch, everybody agrees that she doesn't deserve to be taken seriously. In many of the cases documented by us, which is them, we have found that marking women as witches is used as a method of social control to put the woman or indeed her entire family in their place so as to restore the status quo. So if some Dalit woman is saying something, once you declare a witch, then that's the end of the discussion. Then you can do whatever you want. Then another very things of avatars of Krishna. So item 11A in this schedule details the kind of offense that Asaram Bapu, for example, is alleged to have committed. It says, to create an impression that special supernatural powers are present in himself, incarnation of another person or Holy Spirit, or that the devotee was his wife, husband or paramour in the past birth, thereby indulging into sexual activities with such a person. Okay? Now, again, it's clearly a question of exploitation of women. Very typically, a lot of these babas and things are, there is a huge amount of exploitation, as we know from Rahim and Asaram. There are several cases. But in the case of Asaram Bapu, actually, the case was almost criminal, meaning it was a case of rape. Right? So there, Indian Penal Code was enough. But within 2 weeks of this law, after it was passed, there was an arrest in Bombay, which could not have been done without this law. So this is a very good example of why this law was necessary. Because what was this? There was a person who was claiming in Bombay, in Bombay again, not far from Tata Institute, that he was an avatar of Krishna. And then he had free access to come in this family in front of her husband, of this woman, right? Because he was the Lord Krishna himself. So he was having, sexual relations with this woman. He was molesting his 18-year-old daughter. He asked for all the gold, some 8 lakh rupees of gold this woman gave to him. And this is not a rape, because it's not, he would say that, what did I say? I'm just claiming to be a Lord Krishna, right? If you believe in it, it's your stupidity, no? So this is exactly the point, is that oftentimes the victim, the idea of this law is not to put the blame on the victim, because oftentimes people are desperate, they probably have some illness, or they have some, family problems, and people like this fraudster take advantage of that. They tell you that, okay, I'm the Lord Krishna, I will solve all your problems, and she believes in him. So the right method is to not criticize the woman or try to, and if you actually talk to her, she will not be convinced. You will not be able to argue with her, because she will say that, no, he is Lord Krishna. What are you telling me? But the law can intervene to arrest that person, because he is claiming to be reincarnation of Lord Krishna. You see. So this is to be forbidden. And of course, if he just claims it to be an incarnation of God and doesn't take material advantage of that woman, then there is no problem. There are people who claim that I can claim tomorrow that I'm a reincarnation of Ramanujan, okay? As long as not I'm asking money from you, I can claim whatever I want. So the law is very clear that it's not about claiming to be something. You have to claim something, and then you have to use it for exploitation of other people. So this brings back to this Andhashraddha Nirmulana Samiti. This is my uncle. He was a very dear uncle. Grew up, and he was a very fun uncle to be with. And he was really a remarkable person. He was always quite reasoned. He never raised his voice, even in arguments with most strident opponents. So it's actually he completely believed in constitutional methods, absolutely no violence, absolutely no violent language. In spite of that, just the fact of asking people to think rationally was so threatening to people that they were willing to, take this very extreme step of, and now it is understood that there is a kind of almost a crime syndicate which was behind these murders of 4 eminent intellectuals who were thinking about rationalism. None of them can be, and he in particular, he was inspired. He was a medical doctor by profession. He was an editor of a well-known progressive weekly, Sadhana. And they have been actively fighting for such a law for almost 2 decades. And they have several important victories to their credit against these kinds of fraudulent spiritual enterprises. And now, even after his death, I'm very happy to see, I mean, I was worried when this happened that this whole organization will collapse. But actually, it didn't happen because it had its own organizational, so even after the work of ANISA continues vigorously, there are over 100 branches, 2,000 volunteer members, science van that reaches up to 100,000 students each year. The president is Avinash Patil, and there is a whole team of people working with him. And they're sort of inspired by this saying of Agarkar, who was a progressive kind of a reformer in Maharashtra, to tell what is right and to do what I can. And I think that's a very nice, because oftentimes you cannot do a lot, but you should do what you can. And you should not be afraid to tell what is right. And this would be therefore a natural partnership with rationalist organization from around India. And Tamilnadu Science Forum is certainly one of them. Okay, so I think I'm coming almost to the close. Can I take my 5 more minutes? So, as I said, the philosophical position of ANISA is, in Marathi it is called ANISA, because Andhashraddha Nirmulan Samiti. The philosophical position is not one of kind of evangelical scientism, that science is the answer to everything. That is not what we are saying. It is not a conflict between religion and science. It is a conflict between reason and ignorance, which is exploited by vested interests. You see, and that is where the issue lies. Now, I will come to some of the common allegations that are made. One common allegation is that this whole thing is anti-Hindu. But as you saw, that schedule makes no mention of religion. In fact, there was an interview of Narenda Dabholkar by, I think, Agence France, some couple of years before, earlier. And in that he said that in the whole of the bill, there is not a single word about God or religion. There is nothing like that. Because the Indian constitution allows freedom of worship and nobody can take that away. This is about fraudulent and exploitative practices. So there is absolutely should be no discussion about whether this law is against religion or this or that, right? Because we don't want to enter into that discussion, because that discussion oftentimes becomes not very productive. Secondly, it is not anti-Hindu because, as I told you, this person performing the surgery with his mere hands, he was actually a Muslim and he was performing it in a daroga. So there is nothing particular about Hindu versus Muslim versus Christian. In fact, the ANISA came out against the crying Jesus. And there was a case of crying Jesus in Bombay. There's some, and then later on it was found that there was some leaking pipe where the it's very similar to the milk drinking Ganesha, So superstitions are the same, different kinds of superstition, and they are across the religion. There is nothing particularly specific about Hinduism that makes it more prone to superstitions. It's just a question of your perception, and you can be. And the question is, how can you call it anti-Hindu? The basic thinking about it being anti-Hindu is that somehow this whole Western science is antithetical to India. This skepticism is not Hindu. We all believe in Rigveda. But if you actually look at it, there is a big tradition in India of skepticism. The Lokayata philosophy, it dates back to the first millennium BC. The Charvaka system, there is in addition to denial of God, it doesn't believe in God, there is also rejection of the soul, assertion of the material basis of the mind. It's a very, very almost modern scientific point of view. But it is intermingled with other aspects of Hinduism. So Hinduism is to be taken as this whole, Charvaka is as much part of Hinduism as Shankaracharya. And okay, you can believe in whichever one you want, but it is incorrect to say that Charvaka is less Hindu than Shankaracharya. In fact, even if you go back to Rigveda, there is a very striking hymn about the creation. It's actually a very nice hymn which says something like this: whence this creation had arisen? Perhaps it formed itself, perhaps it did not. The one who looks down on it in the highest heaven, only he knows, or perhaps he knows not. So the point is that it takes a kind of it's a right attitude like a scientist, it's a wonderment that, okay, it's an amazing creation. How did this happen? I don't know. Maybe there is a God, but maybe there is no God. So it's not saying that it was all created by God. You see, it's just leaving it open. Even the Rig Veda. Another allegation was anti-Swadeshi, and this is actually, it has become fashionable also in some academic circles, thanks to postmodernism, which sort of came from the Paris school, and it's sort of fashionable to take this anti-science view as being even more, it's like even more progressive than thou kind of an attitude. But it's actually, which is okay for, theoretical discussion in Parisian cafes, but it's actually very, very detrimental to to organizations like Rationalist Society, which are engaged in a serious battle against superstition. Because why? So some superstitions they're criticized as agents of West. And they say that, okay, we believe in nativism. What about our native traditions? Moreover, this criticism is leveled broadly against Indian rationalism, saying that ideas of skepticism, they are all Western concepts. But as I already told you, Lokayata and Charvaka are as much part of our tradition as Shankaracharya. In the same way that Bacon and Hegel were traditions of the Western society, they were transcendental philosophy in Western philosophical tradition, and there was a more materialistic tradition in the Western philosophical tradition. There is nothing particularly Western or Hindu about it. This point of view also has found some support in quite different quarters from some post-colonial writers, and they basically say, okay, this is all mental colonialism. You are basically trained yourself in the West, and now you are coming and teaching. You don't have any respect for local traditions, the subaltern, and the Ayurvedas, and all these herbal medicines. Now, how can this be? This is a very ahistorical view of science, because a historical view of science makes it clear that it should be viewed as a heritage of all humankind with contributions and strands of ideas mingling from several different civilizations. And if you look at it, so in fact such an attitude is an insult. We have had such an amazing contributions to science going back to Bhaskaracharya, Aryabhatta and Madhava. In more modern times, people like Bose and Chandrasekhar and Raman, they have founded whole subfields of modern physics. And even today, many of my colleagues working in my field, in string theory and many other areas, they are regarded very highly internationally. So are you going to say that all this is not science? All this is very much science, and it all comes from India. So there is nothing anti-Swadesh, is nothing non-Indian about science. For example, the great Indian mathematician Madhavacharya in the Kerala school, they did some of the really important and pioneering work in calculus 200 years before Newton and Leibniz. Now, what is correct is that there was a very Eurocentric writing of history which was prevalent until very recently. And I think people are completely right, and I share their kind of protest against this Eurocentric writing of history. Because, and it does evoke, many historians have written about it, like Romila Thapar has written about it, about how in the art, there was a tendency to say that everything started from the Greeks. So even the Ajanta, Ellora beautiful caves, they would say, no, it actually comes from Greece. Even though there is no connection. So it's a kind of way of, it's a colonial way of devaluing Indian contributions, or to make them look borrowed, which is certainly not true. And I think if somebody is protesting against that, I think it's a very good protest and it should be taken seriously. But look at, one of these people who was critical of Rajiv Dikshit, used to offer a homeopathic drug, Naja, as a remedy for poisonous snake bite. And there is a YouTube video, you should see it. It's actually shocking, it's some 5 rupee thing that he offers for a snake bite, poisonous snake bites. And he says, why do you want to go take an anti-venom drug? And this is exactly what is prevented by the item 9 in this law. That if somebody makes such a claim, he can be arrested, because you cannot make such a claim when, if a pharmaceutical company wants to introduce an anti-venom drug, they have to do hundreds of tests And somebody like Rajiv Dixit can just go on television and say, okay, just take this drug, some nausea. What is even more ironic is that homeopathy is a kind of a European superstition. He says that it's an Ayurvedic medicine, but it's actually a homeopathic which comes from Germany from some 150 years ago. Then he says that the like cures like is an Ayurvedic principle, which is not the Ayurvedic principle at all. So actually this whole posturing about Swadeshi is completely misplaced, because there is nothing Swadeshi about this. It's just superstition. And this claim can pose a very grave danger to public health, and which we should not take. And therefore, a true Swadeshi attitude would be, I mean, I would agree with these advocates of Swadeshi and post-colonial critics about the Euro-chauvinism that is really deeply ingrained. And it's a huge task to really assess our intellectual history and write it from a more objective perspective. But very little would be achieved. I mean, this goes back to the comments in the Indian National, in the Congress the other day. You cannot replace Euro-chauvinism with Indo-chauvinism, or some kind of a pretentious concern for the subaltern traditions, so that, we are actually, all sciences are equal, Ayurveda is the same as this, everything is equal, our whatever was written in the Vedas was the final word. I mean, what we should really do is that these were great contributions from Indian mathematicians and physicists done like Madhavacharya and Aryabhatta. Those are the ones that we should restore, and not claim that putting the head of Ganesha was an evidence for plastic surgery, right? Making those kinds of claims does not give us any value, you see. And we do not succeed in getting rid of the Euro-chauvinism. You only make ourselves ridiculous. So trying to replace Euro-chauvinism by chauvinism about the Hinduism is not the right approach, but we should really say that. And one should think of this as a kind of a consumer protection. So I will maybe skip this. I think I'm running out of time. So one final point I want to make is that therefore there is actually a good case, and this is, I think, where the future should go, that maybe there is a need for a more comprehensive national legislation which takes the experiences of the Maharashtra state and makes a more comprehensive, because now, in fact, somebody said that many people just go to another state, you just go to, in fact, I told you this, performing the surgery with mere hands, right? That person, you just cross the border and you go to Karnataka, then you can do that surgery and nobody can question you. But now Karnataka also has passed a law, and already 500 cases have been reported under the provisions of this law in Maharashtra. So therefore a national legislation is desirable, and maybe organization like Tamilnadu Science Forum or other organizations in Tamil Nadu, they can play an important role, and maybe take this as a kind of a agenda point where concretely you can make some progress and push the government to do something about it. I should say that the experience shows that not only you require a law, but you also require a kind of a social awareness. And having the organization like Andhashraddha Nirmoolan Samiti in Maharashtra made a huge difference. So for example, in Maharashtra we have 500 cases. Compared to that in Karnataka, the situation is a bit different, because they don't have such a tradition. So the number of cases reported there are much fewer. So it shows you that not only do we need law, but we also need simultaneously a kind of a public action to keep this in the discussion. So I think I'll stop here. Actually, I've gone over time.
Thank you, Atish, for a very nice talk about superstitions in our context. Now the floor is open for some questions. Now, so you want to ask some question? Yeah. Brief, because there are a lot of people who want
to ask. Hello. One comment and a few questions. The comment is that Just in a second, sir. I'll just complete in a second. So the thing is that it's very good that you differentiated this belief from superstition. Otherwise, most of the string theorists will go out of business because they believe in extended object strings. They won't get their bread and butter. It has not been proven yet, but they believe. So it's very good. So this is one. This is the comment. The second is that yeah. So there is one thing which so when in our family. When a certain person used to get ill, there's this thing called nazar, So there's some bad omen has happened,
Karani, yeah.
And there's, some mother in the family or very old women used to cure them. And I used to feel better, I myself used to feel better, Then I used to think that it's a psychological kind of thing, which is happening. Maybe it's a psychology. I believe in my mother. I have a faith in my mother. Maybe this is a psychological kind of thing. It is happening with me, But then I have seen 5-6 cases of a child whose psychology has not developed to the psychology of a physicist like me who is studying in an Institute of Mathematical Sciences. His psychology is not developed. It's a very small child. So how he is getting similar cure, just by my mother performing certain mantras.
Yeah.
And
so this is completely, first of all, as I said, this law, suppose you feel good by drinking tea made from ginger, okay? When you have cough, okay? This law doesn't say anything about it. So you're perfectly allowed to drink a tea made from ginger. You're perfectly allowed to perform puja in front of your God, if that gives you any peace of mind. It's only when this is a very specific schedule of 12 things. If it doesn't fall under that, the law doesn't apply. There is no question.
Sorry, no, I'm questioning you. I'm not questioning the law. Law is okay, whatever might be the law. I'm questioning, how do you explain this?
The point is that anecdotal, in science.
No, I've seen 5-6 in front of my eyes. It's not like something I've heard about it.
Right, so the anecdotal, the one way to be certain, as I quoted Feynman, is that it's very easy to fool ourselves. And the most important principle is the most important thing is to not to fool ourselves. And the easiest person to fool is ourselves. So as you said about string theory also, string theories also could fool themselves. Yeah. But they have to be very self-critical to make sure that they are not fooling themselves.
No, but if you see evidence of string theory, even as a supersymmetry, maybe somewhere you see its evidence, then at least I see 5-6 evidences just in front of me. I just don't understand how these children, they're small children, they don't have
to address this is by doing a kind of a clinical, that is how you have double-blind tests, right? Yeah, there are a lot of ways of establishing
which brings me to the second question, where this thing called placebo
so placebo is a major it's a major effect that has been observed, that people feel good if you believe in people just feel good just by taking sugar water if they think that the doctor has given you medicine. So there is a kind of a our body is very complex. You see, body is much more complicated than particles and black holes.
So let me just complete the question, because I just used the word. Yeah, I'll be brief. Yeah, I'll be brief. Yeah. Let me tell you this. You have to give chance to others. Okay, so I'll be brief. So this placebo, so normally the clinical test of a medicine is based on its occurrence with respect to the placebo. Like if there is a placebo which is helping, and if medicine is acting as a placebo, it is not regarded as a medicine. Correct. Normally the clinical test of a medicine. But if it is working, it is working. I don't understand that.
Yeah, but then the medicine is not working, the placebo is working, right?
Hello. Sir, thank you for the wonderful lecture. Sir, my question is, actually, most of the religions in the world try to claim their genuinism by their genuineness, try to project their genuineness by telling about the historical evidences or geographical evidences that are found. Like, for example, from India to Sri Lanka, there is a bridge that we have found. We have evidences that there existed a bridge under the sea. So, my question to you is that, can we take these evidences as a proof so that we can blindly believe in these religions?
Yeah, so the question is...
And we can believe the supernatural powers in all the religions. Thank you.
Yes, so the question is that, archaeological data, analyzing it is very complicated. So again, as I said, the principle is that you should believe in it only to the extent that there is evidence. Just by seeing something, from that you should not immediately extrapolate that actually Hanuman built those, right? Because there is no evidence that Hanuman built it. Suppose you actually, even if you do find this thing, that's not a proof that Hanuman built it, right? So this is what is understood by that you believe as much as there is evidence. You see, if somebody actually finds some archaeological evidence or for some kind of a bridge, okay, that's an interesting geological fact, and one should try to understand it. But that's not a proof of Ramayana. So when you try to take a leap like that, that's when the question arises.
But how 5,000 years before they know this fact?
Yeah, so I think we can examine these questions. There is nothing wrong in examining these questions, but we should not therefore believe in it as much as we believe in, let's say, this table, right? This table is really there, right? I mean, it's there. So I deliberately avoided this question because personally, if you look at the concept of God, first of all, it varies very considerably across cultures. So the concept of God in a Mayan civilization is completely different from the concept of God in Islamic civilization. It's completely different from the concept of God in Hindu civilization, and completely different from Judaic or Christian traditions. So this makes me, as a scientist, I come to the conclusion that therefore God is a kind of a social construct and not, so I think rather than God making man, it's man who has made God. That is my personal belief. But if somebody wants to believe in some kind of an abstract transcendental God, I mean, also some of my other uncles, not Narenda Dabholkar, have some kind of a belief in God in some kind of a power which guides them or whatever. And I don't try to argue with them, even though I don't share their belief. Because extraordinary, yeah, exactly. Yeah, and there is no extraordinary evidence for that. So my personal thing is not to say that from whatever that we know about evolution, whatever we know. Another thing about God is that it seems to me to be a very, very provincial, because if you know about the universe, we have 100 billion galaxies, and we have 100 billion stars. There is this little planet called Earth, and we somehow think that the consciousness of this particular set of monkey-like beings is behind this entire universe. That seems to me to be such a big stretch of imagination that it really requires very extraordinary evidence.
So some questions cannot be answered. That is what you are telling. Such questions cannot be answered.
No, cannot be answered, or I would say that my reaction is that it is most likely not true. But yeah. No. So I'm telling you, my individual belief is that it is not true. Huh? Yes, I mean, if you ask me my personal belief, I don't believe that there is God. Yes.
Dr. Atish, I have two quick questions. One is, I've heard a lot about Dr. Emoto of Japan, who has done a lot of research on consciousness acting on water. Just wanted to know your personal opinion on that.
Who has done this? I'm not familiar with this
Emoto.
Research.
He has done a lot of research on water.
Yes.
How our thoughts influence water.
So once again, from what we understand about the biochemistry, to me it sounds very, very implausible that such a thing can happen. See, the point is that anything is possible. As I said, a golden elephant with wings is possible, right? I mean, if somebody says that I believe in a golden elephant with wings. Now, do you believe in it? I mean, I would say, okay, I don't know. I mean, maybe it exists. But I have no reason to believe in a golden elephant with wings. If you believe in it, okay, I'm fine with that. Same way, these are kind of very implausible explorations, but I don't want to rule it out. If somebody wants to explore some...
Apparently, he has performed a lot of experiments and proven. So I just wanted to know if it is pseudoscience or real science.
My first reaction would be that it's more likely to be pseudoscience. But once again, I don't want to put my money on it because I don't know enough about what the experiment is.
I can explain what we release it money, one grafter for a project, and you are applying or somebody else is applying for such a project.
Yes, exactly.
As simple as that.
Okay. Earlier this month, I started to read a book called Tao of Physics.
Tao of Physics.
Tao of Physics, written by Fujo Capra. And it is almost like convincing. The tagline was like the exploration between the parallels of Eastern mysticism and modern physics.
Yes.
I just want to ask, what are your thoughts on that?
No, so the thing is that, you can take it at different levels, You can take it at a poetic level and you can take it at a scientific level. And see, for example, Rigveda contains some very interesting and uplifting poetry, as I told you, this hymn. But one has to make a distinction between poetry and science, you see. And
Sir, one question.
while there is a kind of a poetic analogy between Feynman diagrams and particles moving and everything being connected to each other, it's very far from having a scientific.
And sir, this law holds for the tribal people, uncivilized people are practicing all this, whatever we call, which is not allowed in the civilized people. The tribal people and uncivilized people are using it, and some barbarian also they are using. Will this law holds for them also, like Andaman Nicobar Island people are?
Yes, the point is that's why I've placed the entire discussion in the context of Indian Constitution. You see, now for all citizens of India, Indian Constitution gives you certain provisions. It's unfortunate that in our country, those provisions are actually not adequately implemented. I mean, unfortunately, people don't have right to really live with dignity. Many people do not have. So to that extent, our Indian Republic has failed, you see. But fortunately, the Indian Constitution gives you a right of liberty of expression and this. But it also says that, okay, women should have dignity. So if some society within Indian is treating women differently, then that woman has the right to demand, why do I not have the same rights as a woman in Bombay? And so to that extent, the provisions of the Indian Constitution apply to all citizens of India.
Thank you, sir.
Normally, what the astronauts say, how the creation has happened, it has happened through evolution. Should there be a creator before the creation happens? That's the question that has been asked.
Yes.
And how the science explains it. And there are many dilemmas in life where, for example, the rewards we get through our effort. Why there is so much of a differentiation? Matters of death, science cannot give us a. So you have accepted that. Okay, that science cannot give us a.
Yeah, so as somebody.
Something which cannot be empirically proved.
Yes. No, but I agree with you. But what I said is that somehow the unknown territory, there was a huge unknown territory, say 2,000 years ago or 3,000 years ago. Meaning, we didn't understand the first thing. And it was completely natural. If there is a lightning, then there is some Indra shaking his Vajra, which is why the lightning is happening. Or Surya is some kind of a god. I think it's perfectly normal actually for human beings to try to find some kind of a pattern and to make up a theory. But now we understand why the lightning happens. So that territory is no longer within religion. That territory has been pushed back. So now from that point of view, God really has a very small place to hide, What is left is maybe the beginning of the universe which we don't understand, maybe the black hole singularity we don't understand. God can hide there, but God cannot hide in evolution. Because now there is so much evidence for evolution that you cannot say that, okay, God, look at your eye and how come this amazing thing came into being? Somebody must have created it. But now we understand there are so many steps and so many animals where you can really see eye being developed from very elementary cells. And there is a very nice description of that, how the eye gets evolved. So something as complicated as eye can get evolved, and we have evidence for it. So there is no reason for a creator to create an eye. So, okay, then God can exist in the beginning of the universe, but I don't know enough about it.
So can we say this, sir? Can we say this, science is superstitious, and with its own data, though the end product is technology, to avoid spiritualism?
Now, why do you say science is superstitious?
It's also a data, as you say, data.
No, it's a question of, you see, it's a question of degree of belief, right? So if
because some of the data, what you say is, it's always contradicting what is.
no, but see, it's like saying, if I jump from a 5th floor, I die. Okay, this is a statement. This is a scientific statement in that most people who have jumped foreign have died. Of course, there are examples. Just the other day, there was an example of a small child falling. So just because it is based on the data doesn't mean, and there are counter examples, doesn't mean that it's not 100% sure that if you fall. But would you believe in the fact that if you will die?
Data reaches everyone, it will be a conflict in science, I say.
No, but is this
data, okay, you are saying about the proof, theoretical proof and of course.
No, I'm saying that the data, if the data is overwhelmingly showing that if you fall from a certain height, you die, then in that sense, science is really common sense. You see, science is not some big science with an S capital. You see, science is just common sense. It's a kind of a refined way of thinking about what you normally do with common sense, avoiding some of the logical traps that you normally fall into.
A scientist teaches theory of evolution and origin of species in his class. Immediately after the class, he goes to church or temple or mosque. Is it not a contradiction?
I mean, I personally would find it a contradiction, and I certainly don't do that. But you know, I'm more sympathetic. I mean, I'm willing to grant that person their personal right to liberty, because I don't think, meaning, especially if you're talking about a law, it is incorrect for the state to be so intrusive. You know, you should not. Of course, we can, as a colleague, I will point out to him this contradiction, and I will say, look, come on, you're my friend, you're a scientist and you're teaching this, and now you're doing this. How is it consistent? And beyond the point, you cannot argue about this with your friends also, or with your relatives. So, but I think one should allow people to have so I think it's a kind of a more, I would say, what is it, the word sahishnu, you know, in Marathi you said sahishnu, that you are willing to allow, it's a, yeah, we are willing to accept, tolerant, yeah, exactly. I think it's a question of, I would say that it's a more tolerant rationalism, I would put it like that. In Marathi, I would say it's sahishnu vivekvad, you know, that we are certainly rationalists, but I would not argue with somebody like Gandhi why he believes in Ram, you see, but I would argue with somebody like Yogi Adityanath, if he wants to, right? Because it is encroaching on the rights of the Muslim community, which are guaranteed by the constitution. He's saying that these are all invaders, they are outsiders, they can go home, but they live here, they are citizens of India. Whereas Gandhiji didn't use the name of Ram to say this, he did exactly the opposite. So I think Ram, therefore it's a very slippery thing that, I mean, you use the name of Ram, but I mean, different people use it in a different way. So I think it's a bit of a waste of time to try to hit on that particular concept. I would rather judge that person by the actions that follow from their beliefs.
Good evening, sir.
I just want to conclude at some stage. One question, third question, fourth question. Finish fourth question.
Sir, this is Nandakumar. I'm a psychologist and a criminologist, and I have basic questions apart from this. Sir, compared to other countries, here interest among students on science is very low. What can be done to improve that? And the other question is, 2 days back in Hindu, I read that one of the Indian scientists based in US, he told there are political pressures on scientific researchers. It must be reduced. So is that true, and what can be done?
I mean, there is that danger in India, but also that danger exists also in other countries. I mean, I think each country has its peculiarities. And in the United States, there could be pressure against climate research. You see, once again, that's a kind of a superstition, right? There is now so much data that the global warming is happening. But oil companies don't want to believe in it. The Republican Party doesn't want to believe in it. So This is a kind of a modern superstition I talked about. So that you don't want to look at the data. And there is no way you can make people to look at the data because the data is so compelling. And there are always, of course, I know a couple of quite well-known scientists who have a somewhat counterpoint of view. But if you look at the overwhelming judgment of the scientific community, there is no, it is clear that there is climate thing is happening. But there can be political pressures against research in climate. In India, there are similar things happening perhaps from the more this Hindu ideology, you know, which is again kind of anti-science in that respect. That if you believe in Ganesh, I mean, you can have belief in Hinduism, but you cannot say that Ganesha's head was actually evidence for plastic surgery, right? I mean, if you say something like that, that's not a very scientific statement. So there can be pressures like that, and I think one has to fight that. I mean, what can you say? Well, I think this science forum is an example where one can help increase the interest among the students.
Now, you were talking about faith, belief and fact. But when you say belief, in science you have theoretical prediction, right? From mathematical models you predict. But now when we talk about belief, that's also belief, this is also belief. Can we say that? Is string theory a belief or it comes from
so string theory is even a more recent example. But let's take an example where, because people, it's always easy to dismiss something by saying, oh, this is your belief, this is my belief, right? So let's take an example which is now established, like Higgs boson, right? I would say that to some extent it's a belief, right? That the spontaneous symmetry breaking happened using the Higgs mechanism. Of course, what sometimes people do not appreciate is that, and which is true also for string theory, that our theories are so powerful nowadays that if you can make a consistent quantum theory of gauge theory with spontaneous symmetry, basically there is only one way symmetry can be broken, and that's the Higgs mechanism. So therefore, that belief already a priori has an extremely high value compared to just a belief saying that, okay, I believe in, golden eagle, whatever, golden elephants. So already at the level of, even without doing an experiment, there is a very strong thing in favor of Higgs boson as compared to golden elephants. Okay?
Hi, good evening. Thank you for your talk. So from what I understand, the anti-superstition law states that those 12 items are punishable because of their harmful implications. But my criticism with religion is that there's an associated social conditioning with religion, and often this has harmful implications in societies. I mean, one could argue, and sociological studies have shown, that a lot of patriarchy in our society is based on religion. And what do you think we could do to perhaps address those social conditionings that have implications that are not as deterministic as some of the more physical ones?
This is a very fine line, and one has to keep this in mind, that you cannot be like, what is the word, evangelical about it. Meaning, it's a question of, there are things that can be done legally with law, and that there are things that has to be done by prabodhan, I don't know how to say, enlightenment or discussion and convincing people and creating, going to schools. So we have a science van program where we go to, then if the children learn in a young age that Venus and these things are just planets, then they don't believe in astrology, you see. So, but this you cannot legislate. You see, there are things that can be legislated and there are things that should not be legislated, because
surely law acts as a source of pressure to do that, right?
Yeah, but the point is that there is a fine line in our constitution to respect personal liberty and to live your personal space. And where
you run the risk of social conditioning.
Yeah, the social, so therefore it's very, it's not an easy decision, you see, but you don't want to make a very draconian law which will really interfere in your life and say that, okay, don't do this because the state is telling you to do this. That's not very democratic. So I think you have to walk that line very finely.
Essentially, astrology cannot be introduced as a course or BSc program.
Yes, yes.
You can do it.
This mic is all right, no? I am coming to a totally different situation. What you said, extraordinary observation claims require extraordinary situations.
Evidence.
I mean, proof or
Evidence.
whatever.
Evidence.
Evidences. But this is not happening in science also. Sometimes even the scientists give an extraordinary claim, the proofs are not that extraordinary, that make it extraordinary, but they get even Nobel Prize for that. Okay, I'm coming to the, I'm coming to that. I'm coming to that. Recent evidence of gravitational LIGO experiments is one such example. It is not, it can be coming under, it is not, okay, it is going scientifically, okay, because it's LIGO experiments. There is an observation. But in this claim of even the experimental formulation itself, there are a lot of claims. It is basically, what is it, your interference, okay. In this, basically the interference, this one is either space changes or temporal changes can give changes. But gravitational waves in the basic itself is, it is not even, it's not even a correct picture is there. Whether it will affect the electromagnetic changes or whether it's a compressional waves, because in changes only time changes can, or temporal changes. Yes. But this gravitational waves is neither coming in this category. It is a tensor wave. No, so let and me it is compressed the space. This, even though your Rig Veda says space cannot be compressed, matter simply comes there, but that's all. Space is neither affected. Okay, leave alone that. What happened? Even the gravitational measurement, what it calls for is the distance changes are 1 proton level of observation. Yes. You are taking a kilometer of lidar, and that you are maintaining. You have to maintain now 1 proton level of not even changes. Right. People were not bothered about signal to noise ratio. If you are an electronics engineer, you will see the signal to noise ratio is very, very poor in this LIGO. Okay? Yes. Because that way, first of all, what you call this kind of, there is a lot of articles, gravitational hoax. It is neither between superstition nor science. It is a scientific hoax. Okay. This kind of a scientific hoax, scientific community has to fight.
Okay, I agree.
That's my request. Okay.
Yes. No. So first of all, I would like to say that it is completely possible that in a scientific experiment, there are examples where scientists deliberately mislead. It's not like scientists are some gods, you know. Scientists are human beings, but what is important is the scientific community. That even, as I give the example of Linus Pauling, you know, he got the Nobel Prize for very important work. He was a great scientist, but people did not believe his claims about the vitamin C. Same thing about LIGO experiment. We can go into it in detail. I'm not an expert in LIGO experiment. Let me. Yes. So LIGO experiment, I'm not an expert in it, but I can tell you that I have heard talks on it, and there are all these questions that you have raised. People have done extremely careful analysis. For example, the LIGO waves were observed simultaneously in 2 different detectors, 4,000 kilometers away, and they were completely correlated. So if it was a noise issue, the noise cannot be correlated in the same way. Since then, there have been multi-messenger events which have been detected, which are observed both in the radio waves as well in gravitational waves, and the 2 observations correlate with each other. So I think one should always go with a little bit of an attitude of, what should I say? No, but I think my point is that I think one should approach these things with a little bit of humility. Because even if I am a theoretical physicist, I should have the humility to understand that I don't really I have not really studied this, all the details, statistical analysis in great detail, but these are very serious people. And there are tens, hundreds of thousands of people who are working on that. If they are very carefully analyzed it, I can look at their paper. My first assumption should not be that, oh, this is a hoax. I am the right guy. I know everything about it. Because, first of all, you also understand the theory behind it very well. It's general theory of relativity, for which there are literally now, it is falling because it's a consequence of, gravitational waves is a consequence of general theory of relativity, which has been established as a fact of nature for a very long time.
Not lot. There is one group which is questioning from Denmark. We are aware of it. There are a lot of people who are working on it. It is clear what is the thing, and it is, they will have to answer. The LIGO people will answer them.
And the LIGO people have actually answered this criticism from Denmark.
Yeah.
I have discussed with LIGO people. Actually, the person who got the Nobel Prize, Kip Thorne, he was my colleague in Caltech. He came and gave a talk, and it's not that they are not addressing that issue. They are addressing that issue, and they believe that the Denmark people are wrong, and this is the process of the scientific community.
Yeah.
If it turns out that the LIGO people are really wrong, which is highly unlikely, people will write a paper about it. It's not that...
Definitely, don't worry, it will be thrown out also. It will be thrown out if that is the case. Okay, let me thank and probably try to close. Fairly fantastic talk as well as discussions. I really enjoyed the discussions, and I'm really impressed that a lot of people have come and they stayed throughout this program. And now I'm going to ask, where is Murugan? Is he going for vote of thanks?
Okay.
Dr. Murugan, who is Tamilnadu Science Forum, he was actually Chennai chapter president.
Okay.
Thank you, Professor Dabholkar. It's an extraordinary event, really. Okay. He, in fact, very rare to see this type of talk where he essentially brought out the strength as well as, I will not call it weakness, the limits of science within which we have to have our own worldview. That he did really extremely well, very competently, without going too much into technical aspects of science. He was able to convince the entire audience that I believe okay, to distinguish various ideas between science and rationalism and other things. Extraordinarily, really good piece of talk. Thank you, sir. Really good. Yeah. The Tamilnadu Science Forum, I can just see the number of youngsters who attend this talk. It's been the outcome of the last 4 meetings with the Tamilnadu Science Forum has organized. It's a really good thing to see youngsters here. I would not like to take too much time for Thanksgiving. First, let me just thank the director of this institute for providing the facility here, allowing this talk to happen here, and providing excellent tea and biscuit. Okay? Tea and biscuit for the audience so that we are equipped to see the tea. Okay? I also would like to thank Dr. TRG, who personally took initiative inviting him. TRG is part of our own thing here, but even then I think I should thank him because for personally inviting you. You are here for your own physics here, but still communicating. Thank you all here. Okay, thank you all. Thank you.